The moment I saw the divorce papers on my kitchen table, my hands went cold, not because my son's marriage was ending, but because I knew exactly who had planned it. That morning, the air in my Savannah home smelled of burnt coffee and lemon dish soap, a mix that somehow made the house feel lonelier. It was supposed to be an ordinary Tuesday, the kind where I'd hum along to Patsy Cline while folding laundry, maybe bake a peach cobbler for when my son, Evan, and his wife, Lily, stopped by after work. But when I walked into the kitchen and saw that manila envelope sitting dead center on the table, neat, deliberate, like someone wanted it to be found, I froze. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Those words sat heavy on the page. And there, printed side by side, were their names. Evan Michael Porter and Lily Ann Carter Porter. Lily, my best friend's daughter. The girl I'd once called my own. I remember gripping the edge of the table just to stay upright. My first thought wasn't anger, it was confusion. Why would Lily leave Evan? They'd only been married 3 years. They had plans, a new house, a puppy, maybe kids someday. Then something darker crept in. Or maybe she didn't plan to stay at all. Because from the very beginning, Lily Carter always knew how to make people believe in her. Before all this heartbreak, before the papers, the silence, and the lies, we were as close as family could be. Our story started years ago in Marietta, Georgia, where the Carters moved into the yellow house across the street. Maggie Carter became my best friend from the moment we met at the PTA bake sale. She had that southern grace that made people want to sit next to her, and a laugh that carried down the block. Her daughter, Lily, was 8 back then, quiet, thoughtful, with strawberry blonde hair and freckles across her nose. My boy, Evan, was 10, wild and curious, always climbing something he shouldn't. The two of them grew up side by side summers, filled with bike rides, lemonade stands, and backyard campouts under string lights. Maggie used to tease me, saying, "Just wait. One day those two will fall in love." I'd laugh, brushing it off. But deep down, I saw it too. When Maggie got sick breast cancer that came fast, and me and I promised her I'd look after Lily, I sat by her hospital bed and said, "You don't worry about that girl. She'll always have a home with us." And I meant it. After Maggie passed, I made good on that promise. I drove Lily to her high school graduation, helped her pack for college, sent her care packages with homemade cookies. She called me Aunt Carol, even though we weren't related by blood. And when she came back from college and started spending more time with Evan again, this time not as playmates, but as adults, I couldn't help smiling. The night Evan told me he was going to propose, I actually cried. I always knew she was the one. I told him, hugging him tight. He grinned that same crooked grin his daddy used to have. "Guess you were right, Mom." Their wedding was small, just family and a few close friends. It was held under the old oak tree at the Carter house, Maggie's tree. Lily wore a lace gown with her mother's pearl earrings, and Evan couldn't stop staring at her. I remember thinking, my boys finally found home. For a while, that was true. Evan landed a steady job as a project manager in Atlanta. Lily started teaching art at the local elementary school. Every Sunday, they came over for dinner. She'd help me set the table, humming softly to herself, while Evan fixed the leaky faucet or played fetch with my old lab, Daisy. We'd laugh, talk about their plans, dream about grandkids someday. Life was good, quiet, simple, the way I liked it. But life has a way of whispering warnings before it screams. It started small, too small for me to notice. Lily began to pull away first. She stopped calling me Aunt Carol. She said, "Mrs. Porter now." All formal and cold, like we hadn't shared decades of memories. When I'd call the house, she'd answer instead of Evan. "He's busy, Mrs. Porter," she'd say in that soft voice of hers. "He'll call you later." But he rarely did. Sunday dinners grew infrequent. "We've just been so tired lately," she'd say, always with that same polite smile. I told myself not to take it personally. Newlyweds need their space. But something about her tone, calm, measured, rehearsed, made me uneasy. Still, I pushed the thought aside. I trusted her. I wanted to trust her. After all, she was Maggie's daughter. The last time we really spoke, was one warm evening in late May. She'd come by with a basket of lemons from her neighbor's tree. We sat on my back porch, sipping sweet tea, fireflies flickering around the yard. "I'm proud of you, Lily," I told her. "You've built such a beautiful life with Evan. Maggie would be so proud." She smiled, but it wasn't her usual smile. It was smaller, sharper. "Life has a funny way of giving people what they think they want," she said. I remember laughing softly, not sure what she meant. And what do you think you want, sweetheart? She looked out over the yard, her eyes distant. I guess we'll find out soon enough. 2 days later, those divorce papers appeared on my kitchen table, and it wasn't Evan who brought them. It was her. I heard the door creak open that morning, and there she was, standing in the doorway with sunlight behind her, holding that envelope like it was nothing more than mail. Lily? I asked, my voice trembling. What's this? She met my eyes calm, steady, and said, I thought it was time you knew. Evan's signing them today. Then she turned, heels clicking softly against the porch steps, and left. I stood there in silence, staring at the door she'd just walked through, realizing something deep and painful. This wasn't just a marriage falling apart. This was a betrayal that started long before the wedding ever did. I didn't sleep that night. The clock on my nightstand ticked through the dark hours, while my thoughts circled back to that envelope on my kitchen table. I kept seeing Lily's calm face, no anger, no tears, no regret. Just quiet control. Something about it didn't sit right. By morning, I decided I needed answers. Evan didn't pick up my calls. Not once. By the third try, it went straight to voicemail. His message still cheerful and familiar. Hey, it's Evan. Leave a message and I'll call you back. I left a message, trying to sound steady. Honey, call me when you can. I need to talk to you. Then I sat down at the kitchen table, staring at the divorce papers again. My eyes traced the legal words that turned love into property and names into case numbers. At the bottom of the last page was a signature line hers already filled in. Lily Ann Carter Porter. Her handwriting was neat and deliberate, just like her mother's had been. But it was the date that caught me. She'd signed it 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks. That meant she'd been planning this, carrying it around, waiting for the right moment. And somehow, I'd had no idea. That afternoon, I drove into town. The sky was heavy with June heat. That kind that makes the air hum. Evan's office was in a glass building near downtown Atlanta, a good 45 minutes away, but I knew better than to show up there unannounced. Instead, I went to the one place I thought Lily might still be, the elementary school, where she taught art. The front office smelled like crayons and disinfectant. A woman behind the counter looked up and smiled politely. Can I help you, ma'am? I'm looking for Mrs. Porter, I said, forcing a smile. Lily Porter, she teaches art. The secretary typed something into her computer, then looked up. She actually resigned last month. My heart stuttered. Resigned? Yes, Mom. End of the school year. Said she was moving out of town. I blinked. Out of town? Did she say where? The woman frowned. I'm sorry. She didn't. Just turned in her keys and left early for the summer. Left early. Moved out of town. I thanked her, barely remembering how I made it back to my car. I sat there for a long time with my hands gripping the steering wheel, watching the school buses pull out. Somewhere between the laughter of children and the hum of engines, it hit me. That night, Evan finally came by. It was late past 9, and the sound of his truck tires on the gravel driveway nearly made me cry with relief. He walked in quietly, shoulders slumped, eyes shadowed. Hey, Mom. His voice sounded tired, older somehow. I tried to keep calm. Evan, what's going on? He looked down, rubbing the back of his neck. I guess you saw the papers. I nodded slowly. She brought them here herself. His jaw clenched, just for a moment. Then he sighed. Yeah, that sounds like her. There was a weight in his tone that scared me. I pulled out a chair for him at the kitchen table, the same one where he used to do his homework, where we'd had family dinners for years. Sit down, honey. Talk to me. What happened? He hesitated, then sank into the chair, elbows on his knees. It's been bad for a while, he said quietly. She's been distant, cold. Always somewhere else in her head. I thought it was stress at work, but then she quit. Said she needed space. Next thing I knew, she moved out of the apartment and sent me those papers. I studied his face, the exhaustion in his eyes, the lines around his mouth that hadn't been there before. Did she say why? He shook his head. No, just that she wasn't happy anymore. The words landed like stones. I wanted to ask 1,000 questions. Did you fight? Did she cheat? Did you do something wrong? But the way he sat there, silent and broken, I couldn't. Instead, I reached across the table and took his hand. Evan, do you still love her? He was quiet for a long time before answering. I thought I did, but now I don't even know who she is. Neither did I. The next morning, I stopped by the old Carter house across the street. It had been empty since Maggie passed, though Lily kept it up, mowing the lawn, repainting the porch, even planting a few flowers out front. But now, the yard was overgrown. The porch light was off, A thin layer of dust covered the mailbox. I checked anyway. Inside was a single envelope addressed to L. Carter, no forwarding address. That's when my stomach dropped. Something about all this didn't add up. She hadn't just left Evan. She'd left everything. Her home, her job, her life here. I leaned against the mailbox, the summer heat pressing against my skin. And for the first time, I let the question form fully in my mind. What if Lily never loved him at all? It felt cruel to think, but once it surfaced, it wouldn't go away. Had this all been a performance? The years of friendship, the laughter at our Sunday dinners, the tears at her wedding? Had she just wanted something? I didn't know what that something was, but I was determined to find out. Because there's one thing a mother learns early on. When your child's been hurt, you don't sit quietly. You start digging. Over the next few days, I went through everything I could. Old photos, wedding receipts, texts, even her old Christmas cards. I was looking for anything that could tell me why. It wasn't until I opened a small keepsake box I'd kept since Maggie's passing that I found something odd, a folded letter tucked between old photos of us and a recipe card in Maggie's handwriting. It was addressed to me, but the handwriting wasn't Maggie's. It was Lily's, and the date on it. Nearly 2 years before she married Evan. I unfolded it carefully, my hands trembling. The first line made my blood run cold. Dear Aunt Carol, I've been thinking about what you said about how you'll always be here for me. I want you to know I believe you. Maybe more than you realize. Think. The rest of the letter was cryptic, rambling, almost emotional, but the last line was what broke me. Sometimes love is just the doorway we walk through to get what we really need. I stared at those words for what felt like forever. The paper soft and warm from my hands. And then I knew this wasn't just about a broken marriage. Something deeper had been set in motion years ago, and I'd been too blind to see it. I must have read that letter a dozen times before I could even breathe properly again. The handwriting looped neatly across the paper, so gentle, so familiar. But the meaning underneath it was cold, deliberate. Sometimes love is just the doorway we walk through to get what we really need. What did she mean by that? What did she need? For days, those words haunted me. They played in my mind while I cooked, while I swept the porch, while I sat in church pretending to sing along to hymns. I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd missed something, a thread that connected it all. And then, one evening, I found it. I was sorting through a stack of old paperwork in my home office bills, insurance property files, when I came across a folder labeled Estate Documents, Carter Family. I hadn't touched it in years. It was from when Maggie passed away. I'd been her executor, helping settle the last of her affairs. Inside were the usual things: a copy of her will, death certificate, and a small note she'd left me. But beneath those papers, I found a sealed envelope with Maggie's handwriting on it. It said, "For Lily, to be opened after her 25th birthday." Lily had turned 25 the same year she married Evan. A chill ran through me. Why hadn't she ever mentioned this letter? I hesitated, feeling wrong for even thinking about opening it. But Maggie had trusted me, and maybe, just maybe, this was the missing piece. So I did. Inside was a handwritten note, short and fragile. "My sweet girl, if you're reading this, it means I couldn't stay to see you grow into the woman I know you'll become. Please, don't let bitterness guide you. You have a good heart. Don't use love as a way to fix the hurt I caused you. Let it heal you instead." I froze. Then, below that, a single line that made my stomach twist. "And please, forgive Carol. She did what she thought was best. Forgive me." I sank into the chair, that letter trembling in my hands, the room spinning with memories. Maggie in her hospital bed, whispering, "Promise me you'll look after her." The way she'd turned her head away when I told her I'd make sure Lily was taken care of. Had there been something unsaid? Something she'd wanted to tell me but couldn't? The next day, I drove to Dawsonville, where Maggie's brother still lived. Tom Carter was a quiet man, the kind of person who measured words before speaking them. I hadn't seen him. "Hey, Tom," I said softly since the funeral. When he opened the door, surprise flickered across his face. "Carol Porter. Well, I'll be damned. Can I come in?" He led me to the porch, handed me a glass of iced tea. "Haven't heard from you in a while. What brings you by?" I took a breath. "It's about Lily." His expression changed instantly. He leaned back, eyes narrowing just a little. "She all right?" "I'm not sure," I admitted. "She left Evan. Disappeared, really. I found some old letters from her, and from Maggie. I think there's more to this than I realized." Tom was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed. "You know, I always figured this might happen." My heart skipped. What do you mean? He stared out at the field beyond the porch. You and Maggie were close, but she didn't tell you everything. I felt my throat tighten. Tell me what? He rubbed his jaw, reluctant. Maggie was in a bad spot before she passed. She had some money troubles, medical bills, mortgage it piled up fast. You remember that old house? I nodded. She almost lost it. I helped her refinance. He gave a small nod. Right. But what you don't know is she put the title in your name for a while, to keep it safe from the bank. I blinked, confused. That can't be right. She told me she just needed me to co-sign the paperwork. Tom shook his head. No. The deed listed you as the temporary owner. She figured she'd transfer it back once she got better. I felt the color drain from my face. Oh my lord. By the time she passed, the house legally belonged to you. He continued quietly. I think Lily found out later, maybe when she went through her mother's things. I never said anything because, well, I thought y'all had worked it out. I couldn't speak, so that was it. The old Carter house, Maggie's home, Lily's childhood was still under my name. Lily must have discovered that years ago. And suddenly her words, sometimes love is just the doorway we walk through to get what we really need, made a terrible kind of sense. She'd married my son not just out of affection, but out of proximity. Proximity to me, to the deed, to the property, to everything her mother left behind. That night, I couldn't stop shaking. I pulled out every document I could find, tracing signatures, dates, bank transfers, everything lined up. The Carter home was still mine legally. Anyway, I'd forgotten about it after the paperwork cleared, thinking the bank took care of it. And then I remembered something else. Last year, Lily had asked me out of the blue if I'd ever thought of selling it. We'd been having coffee at my kitchen table when she said it, her tone casual. It's such a beautiful old house, she'd said. Wouldn't it be better if someone lived there again? I'd smiled. Maybe someday. But for now, it feels like a piece of your mama's memory. I couldn't let it go. She'd only nodded. But I remembered how her eyes had flickered just for a moment with something sharp, unreadable. Now I knew what it was. Disappointment. She'd been planning this all along. The next day, I confronted Evan. We sat on the porch, cicadas humming in the background. Evan, I began carefully. I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me. He looked up, wary. Okay. Did Lily ever ask you about the Carter house? About ownership or paperwork? He frowned. Once or twice. Yeah. She said she was thinking of fixing it up, maybe turning it into an art studio. Why? I swallowed hard. Because that house isn't hers. It's not even yours. It's still under my name. And I think that's why she married you. His eyes widened. Mom, what are you saying? I met his gaze, steady. I'm saying she didn't marry you for love, Evan. She married you for access. The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. He leaned back slowly, shaking his head in disbelief. No, she wouldn't. But his voice cracked before he could finish. And in that moment, I knew he believed me, because deep down, he'd seen the signs too. Evan didn't say a word for a long time. He just sat there, elbows on his knees, staring down at the wooden porch floor like it could offer him an answer. The sun had already set, and the air was heavy with that thick Georgia humidity that clings to you, like grief does when you're trying to let it go. Mom, he finally said, his voice hollow. Are you sure about this? You really think Lily? I cut him off gently. I don't think, Evan. I know. I showed him Maggie's letter, the one meant for Lily. I told him about the deed, about what Tom said, about the conversation at my kitchen table a year ago. Every word came out slow, careful, like I was afraid of shattering something fragile between us. By the time I finished, Evan's hands were trembling. He leaned back, eyes glassy. God, he whispered. She played us both, didn't she? She played all of us, I said softly. But I don't think it started out that way. He looked at me, confused. I think she meant to love you, I continued. I think she wanted to. But once she found out about the house, about the past, something shifted. Maybe she saw us as part of the problem, the people who took what was hers. Evan shook his head, tears glistening under the porch light. I thought she married me because she saw something good in me. I thought I was finally enough for someone. I reached out and touched his hand. You were enough, honey. You always were. She just wasn't ready to see it. He nodded faintly, but I could see the storm building behind his eyes. 2 days later, he got a text from Lily. It was short. Can we talk? Meet me at the old Carter place. Please. I told him not to go alone. I told him she'd already said goodbye once and might not mean this kindly. But he just shook his head. I need to hear her say it, he said, to my face. And I understood that. Closure has a way of whispering promises it never keeps. So I followed him, not close enough for him to see, but near enough to step in if things went wrong. The old Carter place sat just outside Dawsonville, past a stretch of overgrown road lined with pine trees. The house was still beautiful, in that faded, aching way white paint, peeling from the porch columns, the windows clouded with dust. I parked down the road, hidden by the trees, and watched as Evan pulled up in his truck. Lily was already there, standing on the porch, in a pale blue dress, her hair loose, the evening light spilling over her like a memory. Even from where I sat, I could see the way her face changed when she saw him. A flicker of something between regret and relief. He walked up to her slowly. "Why here?" he asked, his voice carrying just enough for me to hear through the open window. "Because this is where it started," she said softly, "and maybe where it needs to end." Evan folded his arms. "You disappeared, Lily. No call, no note, just that letter. And now you want to talk?" She hesitated, then nodded. I didn't know how else to explain it. "Explain what?" His voice cracked. "That you used me?" Lily flinched like he'd hit her. "I didn't use you, Evan. I loved you. I still..." "Don't," he snapped. "Don't say that word unless you mean it." Silence. The wind stirred the trees. Finally, she said it, the words I think she'd been carrying for years. "My mother's house was supposed to be mine. She told me once before she got sick that I'd always have a place to come back to. But when she died, it was gone. Signed over to someone else. To your mother." I closed my eyes. Lily's voice trembled. "Do you know what that felt like? Watching everything that was supposed to be my safety, my inheritance, belong to someone else's family? I thought your mom stole it. I thought she took it from us." Evan's shoulders tensed. "So you married me to get close to her?" "No," Lily whispered. "I married you because I wanted to hate her. And then I met you, and it got complicated." Evan's laugh was sharp, painful. "Complicated? You call lying to me for years complicated?" Tears welled in her eyes. "I didn't mean for it to go that far. I just wanted to understand what kind of person could take something that didn't belong to her. But the more time I spent around you, the harder it got to keep the truth straight." She stepped closer. "And then, your mom offered to help us buy a house. She hugged me, like family. She was kind to me, and that broke me, Evan, because I couldn't hate her anymore. But I still couldn't forgive her, either." Evan's voice was quieter now. "So you left instead?" She nodded. "Because I didn't deserve the love I got. Not from you, not from her." I sat in my car, my hand over my mouth, tears stinging my eyes. There it was, the truth, laid bare between them, like an open wound. Lily wasn't some scheming villain. She was a girl who'd inherited someone else's pain and didn't know how to put it down. Evan turned away from her, pacing across the porch. "You could have told me," he said. "You could have trusted me." She smiled sadly. "And what would you have done? Hated your mom? Tried to give me something that wasn't yours to give?" "No, Evan. You would have tried to fix it. You always do." He clenched his jaw. "I would have forgiven you." That made her cry harder. That's what I was afraid of. The conversation ended quietly. She handed him a manila envelope, I couldn't see what was inside, and walked down the steps toward a silver sedan parked on the dirt road. He didn't try to stop her this time. When her car disappeared around the curve, I stepped out from where I'd been hiding. Evan was still standing there, staring at the horizon like he was waiting for it to change its mind. He didn't look surprised to see me. "She's gone," he said simply. "I know." He handed me the envelope. Inside was the property deed signed over, notarized, clean. Lily had transferred the house back to me. There was also a short note, written in that same looping script. "Carol, I was wrong. You didn't take anything from us. You kept it safe. I see that now. I hope this lets your son and me finally let go. Lily." That night, I sat on the porch again, the air heavy with crickets and quiet. Evan went inside hours ago, exhausted, but I stayed. Because sometimes, forgiveness doesn't arrive all at once. Sometimes, it sits beside you in the dark, until it feels safe enough to breathe. I thought about Maggie, her laughter, her faith, the way she used to say, "God gives us the same lessons until we learn how to love through them." Maybe she was right. Maybe Lily's betrayal wasn't a punishment. Maybe it was just the final echo of an old misunderstanding, asking to be healed. And though I'd lost something precious in the process, trust, maybe, or innocence, I realized I'd gained something else too. Peace. Because now, when I think of that old house, I don't see a wound anymore. I see a story, a complicated, human, broken kind of love that tried to make itself right in the end. And that's enough for me. It's been 9 months since Lily left. 9 months since that envelope changed everything, not just the deed, but the way I looked at the people in my life. At first, the silence was unbearable. Every corner of the house whispered their names. Evan's laughter used to echo down the hall when she'd tease him about his bad cooking. And now, there were only the sounds of my own footsteps and the clock ticking in the kitchen. But slowly, life began to settle. Evan moved back in for a while. Said he needed space to think. We didn't talk much those first few weeks, not about her. Anyway, we just existed side by side. Two quiet hearts, trying to find rhythm again. I cooked dinners the way I used to. When he was a boy-baked chicken, mashed potatoes, collard greens. I'd leave a plate for him on the counter when he came home late from work. Sometimes he'd join me, sometimes he wouldn't. But the plate was always empty by morning. That was enough. Healing, I realized, doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it just shows up as an empty plate and a clean fork. One morning, I found Evan sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee. The first real smile I'd seen on his face in months flickered there. Faint but steady. "I talked to Lily," he said. My heart skipped. "When?" "Last week," she called. I sat down, waiting. "She's okay," he continued. "She moved to North Carolina, working at a nonprofit that helps families keep their homes." He paused, looking down at his mug. "She said she's trying to make peace with what happened." I let out a long breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. "That's good." "Yeah." He hesitated, then added softly, "She asked me to tell you thank you." I looked at him, confused. "Thank me? For what?" "For not hating her," he said. "She said she could feel that you didn't hate her, even when you had every reason to." Something warm spread through my chest. "Hate," I said quietly, "is just love that's been waiting too long to be forgiven." He nodded, eyes glistening, and that was the first time we both cried together. Not out of anger, not out of regret, but out of release. Spring came early that year. The hydrangeas bloomed before Easter, the same way they did the summer Lily first called me Mom. I was out in the yard pruning them when I saw Evan walk down the driveway with a woman I didn't recognize. She had short auburn hair and kind eyes, the kind that met yours without flinching. "Mom," Evan called. "This is Rachel." I wiped my hands on my apron and smiled. "Well, hello there, Rachel." She grinned, offering her hand. "It's so nice to finally meet you, Mrs. Harper." "Oh, please." I laughed. "Just Carol." They'd met at the community center, where Evan had started volunteering to help with small home repairs. She ran one of the youth programs there. I watched the two of them together that afternoon, the way she listened when he spoke, how she didn't fill the silence with nervous chatter. She was different from Lily, but in the best way. Later that evening, when Evan drove her home, he came back to the porch and sat beside me. "You like her?" he asked. I smiled. "I do." He looked down at his hands. "I'm scared to start over." "Of course you are," I said gently. "Starting over means trusting that love won't hurt the same way again. But it's worth the risk, Evan. Always is." He nodded, his expression thoughtful. "You ever think Lily and I were just meant to teach each other something?" I reached over and squeezed his hand. "I think that's exactly what you were meant to do." That night, after he went to bed, I pulled out Maggie's old letterbox, the one I hadn't opened in years. Inside were birthday cards, a photo of us at the lake one summer, and a small folded note I'd never noticed before. It must have slipped in between the others. It was written in her familiar handwriting. "Carol, if life ever gets too tangled between our children, promise me you'll choose love over pride. We've both made mistakes, but love is the only thing that makes them worth surviving." I don't know if Maggie knew what the future held when she wrote that, but I do know she was right, because pride could have kept me bitter. It could have made me tear up that deed, curse Lily's name, and harden my heart. But instead, I chose love, the kind that doesn't excuse the past, but understands it. Months later, I went to visit Maggie's grave, for the first time in years. It was a quiet Sunday morning. The air smelled like honeysuckle and rain. I brought hydrangeas, blue ones, her favorite. When I knelt down to lay them on the grass, I found something already there. A small, white envelope with my name written on it. For a second, I thought I was imagining things. But when I opened it, my breath caught. Inside was a single sheet of paper. The handwriting wasn't Maggie's. It was Lily's. "I came here today to say goodbye to her, and to you, the mother I never had, and the one I didn't deserve. Thank you for showing me grace, when all I gave you was pain. I'll carry that lesson with me for the rest of my life. Love, Lily. I sat there for a long time, tears falling onto the earth. And in that moment, something in me settled, like a knot finally coming undone. It's funny, people always think betrayal is the end of a story. But I've learned it can also be the beginning of wisdom. I still keep the house, the same one Maggie left behind, the same one Lily tried to reclaim, the same one where I almost lost my son. But now, when I walk through it, I see more than just walls and memories. I see lessons written into every corner, about forgiveness, about faith, about how love sometimes comes disguised as heartbreak. A few weeks ago, I hosted a Sunday dinner. Evan brought Rachel, and they helped me set the table. The air was filled with laughter, the smell of cornbread and roast chicken, and the sound of music from the old radio in the kitchen. As I looked at them, I felt a warmth rise in my chest, that quiet, kind of joy that doesn't need anyone else to see it to be real. Life had gone on, not perfectly, not without scars, but honestly, and that was enough. Sometimes, late at night, I still think about Lily. I wonder if she ever drives past the Georgia border, rolls her window down, and thinks of this place of us. If she does, I hope she knows she's forgiven. Because in the end, she didn't destroy my family. She just showed me what it meant to rebuild one. They say home is where the heart is, but I've learned that sometimes home is also where the heartbreak lives, where lessons are planted deep, and forgiveness grows slow, like roots in stubborn soil. When I think back to everything that happened, my best friend's daughter becoming my daughter-in-law, the joy, the betrayal, the silence that followed, I don't see villains anymore. Just people doing the best they could with what they understood at the time. Maggie wanted to secure her daughter's future. Lily wanted to feel whole again. And I just wanted my family to be happy. But life has a way of twisting our good intentions into lessons we never asked for. That day, I found those divorce papers on my kitchen table. I thought I'd lost everything. My trust, my family, my peace. But maybe that was the day I started seeing the truth. That peace isn't something you find after the storm. Sometimes it's what's left standing because of it. Evan healed. Lily found her path. And I found grace. Grace for others. Yes, but mostly grace for myself. For believing in people who broke my heart. For loving too deeply. For forgiving anyway. Because love doesn't mean keeping the door open for those who hurt you. It means wishing them well even after you've closed it. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, a friend, a family member, maybe even someone you called your own, I want you to hear this. You don't have to carry the bitterness with you. You can set it down right where you are and walk forward a little lighter, because forgiveness isn't saying what they did was right. It's saying you deserve peace more than you deserve revenge. And if you've made mistakes, if you've been the one who caused the hurt, maybe this is your reminder that it's never too late to set things right. Tell me, would you have forgiven Lily if you were in my shoes? Or would you have let that betrayal define the rest of your story? I'll be here in the comments, waiting to hear your heart. And if my story touched yours tonight, go ahead and follow, because sometimes the only way we heal is by listening to each other's truths.